All right, the Democratic Party is having their convention in about a month. It's in Milwaukee. We've seen a lot of video about how violent riots can get across the country. In fact, just this week, Seattle police released body cam footage showing rioters throwing explosive rocks, bottles, all at law enforcement. And much of the same is happening in Portland. We've been hearing about that all week. And now police officers are getting their ability to protect themselves and others taken away. Well, here's how some police officers are handling. The Milwaukee Journal Sentinel is reporting that at least 100 law enforcement agencies have backed out of security contracts for the Democratic National Convention. It's scheduled in Milwaukee in mid-August. The police agencies are citing concerns over restrictions that have just come out regarding crowd control measures. For more perspective on this, I want to bring in former police chief in Boston, Dan Linskey. Chief, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Hey, Chief, I wanted to jump in and ask you, as these departments are pulling out, how big of a concern is security, especially since, it was supposed to be smaller and most was going to be virtual?
It's a big concern, especially now that we've got such debate in society where large groups are turning out to make themselves heard. And those groups are fine. It's the individuals who will use those large crowds to engage in violence and hijack whatever the message is those crowds are trying to spread and engage in destruction. So they've got to be prepared for that, even though they're expecting a smaller convention audience, need to be prepared for large crowds, including some who are going to be intent on trying to hijack the message and engage in violence.
You know, Chief, in 2004, the Democrats held their convention in your city there in Boston. You played a key role. The thing that's interesting is, obviously at all these conventions, you've got people who want to protest and create shenanigans and such. But as this happens, and as these Democrats tell the police officers they're taking tactics off the table, how concerning is it as a police officer to say, you got to go do all this, but I'm taking these 5 tactics off the table for you not only to protect yourselves, but the people that you've been sworn to protect?
And for the agencies that are coming in outside, I have a duty and obligation to protect my city and my citizens from liability issues and lawsuits that my officers may encounter if they go to a location where they can't use the way they were trained, the methods in which they were trained, and the tools they were trained with. Before the DNC or before any of these conventions, you need the region to help you out with this. Boston couldn't do it. We brought resources in from around our region as well. And if you're going to do, prior to this, you have an agreement on what's the acceptable use of force policy, what's the acceptable methods to keep control of crowds. And all of that is based on agreements and policies, procedures, and training that has occurred over the years, based on what court rulings are on what law enforcement can use force. Law enforcement can use one level of force above that which they are met with. We've seen examples in the U.S. here in Boston where the protesters deployed tear gas against law enforcement. So if you're taking it off the table for law enforcement with never a possibility, that just puts the officers in harm's way. It puts the police chiefs who send their officers and my city for liability issues if my officers are doing something that's outside their training that they're not supported for. So, as a police chief, if I can't have my officers, respond, use their training, and stay within the use of force policies, it would be negligent of me to send my troops there. We clearly want to make sure that we have the ability to have resources on the table when we're met with challenges that we may not know what's coming from the protesters.
Let me ask you, you said to respond in kind, but what about this having, elevated the physical threat? For example, could we see more use of tasers, batons? The protesters want to get away from physical contact with police, but wouldn't this elevate it to that point?
You're absolutely right. It could cause that we have to go hands-on and utilize techniques that have been proven to be problematic in the past. So we definitely want to make sure that we keep our options available. I have no problem with having a process in place that limits tear gas. In my city, I would have had to send an email to my commissioner, and he would have had to reply in writing for us to deploy tear gas. That was our last line of defense if we needed to deploy it. I'm happy to say we never had to when I was in control there at some of the events and riots we had. But having it completely off the table isn't safe for the community. It's not safe for the officers, and it's not a good decision. And I would ask that those making decisions about police use of force go to an academy, go to a use of force training program, get read up on the law of it, look at the tools that we've established and why we established them. If you want to change it, fine. but do it in an educated, informed manner without just responding with, without knowing all the facts and circumstances and what your decisions can actually do, as we're seeing here, where mutual aid is being pulled back because police chiefs and their city managers and mayors can't take the liability of putting their officers on the field where they're not able to use their training and their tools the way they were trained.
Hey, Chief, I don't want to put you in a box and we don't have a lot of time, but I want to ask you this question. The Democratic Party now seems to be very clear that they are for defunding the police. Is it make it hard? I know police officers come from all sorts of backgrounds, politically speaking. I'm sure some vote for Democrats, some vote for Republicans. So I don't want to paint them all with a broad brush. But doesn't it make it very difficult if you're a police officer to want to be a Democrat when you know that the party, at least at the national level, doesn't have your back?
Yeah, so police officers go with the individual. I've worked for Democratic mayor for 22 plus years. I vote for individuals, and I vote for those who are informed in what they are doing and are helpful in helping my team, my city move forward on a host of issues, right? Whether it's law enforcement or the social justice network, issues around that. It's difficult when people make decisions that are not informed. I don't care if they're on the left side of the party or the right side of the politics.
Yeah.
If you're making decisions without having the information to make your decision, then that's a decision that's unwise.
Yeah. So, and I assume you mean O'Malley, right? But this is a new breed, and I don't mean to go down this rabbit hole because I don't want to put you in a bad position, but I get it, and I think that I've never seen so many leaders at a national level come out so forcefully against the police. So anyway, I appreciate it. I want you to have a great weekend. Thank you for sharing this insight with us, and stay safe, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Still to come, social media censorship is getting out of control. We've been talking about this for so long. We're going to speak to radio show host Joe Pags about why he was banned from Twitter. Plus, you may have heard of this. People are receiving packages coming from China that contain mysterious seeds. We're going to ask a former member of the CIA why this is a major cause for concern.